Hi, it is Kat from My Happy Insides, and today I want to talk about a common mindset mistake that I see people make when they're trying to change. And as you are probably aware, when we are stuck and we have some sort of roadblock holding us back from changing, there are two possible things that we could be facing. The first is a technical challenge where maybe we're just missing information or skills, and so we can't move forward. Well, in that case, if you have a technical challenge, you need a new skill set. You need to learn what it is that is missing so you can move forward. That's great. But the other type of challenge, which many of us find ourselves facing, is that we actually do know what to do. We're not missing any information. We're just not taking action. And this is called an adaptive challenge. And that requires a new mindset. And the new mindset is where a lot of people will get tripped up. They'll kind of do part of the work, but not all of the work. And one of the reasons this happens is that there are actually different ways of knowing that we have this limiting belief and that it's holding us back. And a really great metaphor that I'd love to share with you is something I learned from my meditation retreat, where it was being explained that there are multiple levels and depths of knowledge that we have. And this great analogy was that you're sitting in a restaurant, looking at a menu, and you see a meal that looks like it's going to be pretty delicious. You know, based on your experience and your history, that this combination of ingredients and flavors is going to be pretty good, and you're probably going to like it. Now, that's one level of knowing. Intellectually, I know I'm probably going to like that meal. Well, then let's shift over and you see a server walk by, and they're actually carrying that meal to another person's table. So now all of a sudden you see it and maybe you smell it. So you know at a slightly deeper level, oh, I'm probably going to like that. So now it's a little bit deeper than just reading about the ingredients. You're actually smelling it and seeing it, and you have a better idea. But it's really not until that meal sits down in front of you and you can take a bite and experience it firsthand that you truly know if this is a delicious meal. So what does this have to do with mindset? Well, oftentimes when people are doing the work to uncover a limiting belief, they might realize, I've got this limiting belief and, it's not entirely true. And you can know intellectually that your limiting belief is not only holding you back, but it's probably not completely valid. But they stop there. So they've identified the belief, they know it's not completely valid, but then they don't actually do any deeper way of really knowing that and understanding that firsthand. Now, let me use an example. Let's say that you are in a workplace setting, you're working from home, it's 2020, and on your team, you have found that you struggle to speak up and pitch ideas to the team. Now, you might have done a little digging and you realize you have a limiting belief that if I speak up and maybe my idea is no good, I'll get shot down and embarrassed, and people aren't going to want to come to me for ideas. So maybe you've identified that you have this belief that it's probably not worth speaking up. Now, you can know intellectually that that's probably not completely true. Sometimes my colleagues ask me for my ideas, but you haven't dug any deeper. And so sometimes people will think that it's enough just to know what the limiting belief is, but that's not always the case. It's actually more worthwhile and longer lasting to change our mindset and to adopt a new mindset when we have some experience to go along with that intellectual knowledge. What you would want to do is actually start to test it. And that's why I love the immunity to change process, which is not just identifying these beliefs that are keeping us stuck. It's also about testing them in a way that feels safe so that we can get some feedback about whether this belief is valid or not. So maybe you go to the colleague who's open to your ideas and you start there. You make a suggestion to that person about your idea and see how that goes. Maybe they're really responsive and they like the idea and they want to come back, or they say, hey, you should tell the whole team about this. Why don't you pitch this in the next meeting? Now, all of a sudden, you are actually experiencing for yourself that your limiting belief is not completely true. Now, this doesn't mean that you'll never get shot down, or maybe one of your ideas might not go over well, but instead of just knowing the belief isn't completely valid, you've actually experienced it for yourself. So it's kind of like the meal. There are different ways of knowing something. And so where people get stuck with the mindset work is that they'll just think it's enough to identify the limiting belief and then just to acknowledge that it's probably not true and that it's a roadblock and they should change their mind. But the deepest way to change your mind is to actually experience it. When you have these in-person experiences, you are starting to rewire your brain. And you're changing the way that your brain is firing because all of a sudden, this experience that you've had is teaching you a new lesson. And so you're able to say, oh, the bad thing didn't happen. Maybe it's safer for me to try another thing. And you can experiment again and again and slowly push yourself and open up your world so that you're not so limited. So I want you to pay attention to whether or not you're actually testing or kind of pushing back on some of these limiting beliefs you have. Because only when we start to experience for ourselves that these beliefs aren't true, that's when we can make these really deep connections and help change our mindset for good. And that's when we can stop just knowing better but not doing better and actually start doing better.